Entering version 1.1 will be Silver Wolf, one of the first characters we've been introduced to in Star Rail when she was infiltrating her space station with Kafka. As an expert hacker, it's only fitting for her to be a Nihility unit, the class known for inflicting debuffs and inhibiting enemy performance. It's also fitting for her to be part of the Quantum element, seeing as how Quantum features a more dimensionally abstract form of combat in a similar fashion to Seela's almost reality-bending attacks. In contrast to Seela and Jingyuan's more straightforward potential and application, though, we don't have that great of an understanding of Nihility units yet, as currently there's only 3 in the game. Welt, Pela, and Sampo, making Silver Wolf the first 5-star Nihility unit with a featured banner, and therefore raising many questions as to what purpose she has in a party, whether you should take her or simply another damage dealer. Today we're going to look into Silver Wolf and what her inclusion means for the game in terms of team building. As stated earlier, Silver Wolf belongs in 2 rare niches. Not only is she part of the still underexplored Nihility path, but she's also a Quantum unit, giving her a very unique function in the early metagame. Breaker-type characters are a bit of a mixed bag when it comes to RPGs, historically speaking. On one hand, they might be considered superfluous in that why would you waste a party slot on a character who revolves around setup when you can find a damage dealer with a bit of that in their kit? In this case, why would fielding Silver Wolf in tandem with Seela be better than Jingyuan or Yanqing with Seela? From my experience playing gacha games with a dedicated breaker class, they actually end up being more valuable for the team than the DPS units themselves, and even in games that don't officially have breakers, heavy emphasis is given to any character who can apply any form of DPS enhancement. You guys may remember when Razor's Constellation 4 was all the rage in the early days of Genshin, or how Viridis Invenerer has one of if not the most broken 4-piece bonuses in the entire game. What makes breaker characters stand out from DPSers is that they have a higher likelihood of being future-proof by virtue of scaling alongside the meta. For example, support units like Bronya are more likely to withstand the test of time than Seela or Jingyuan due to combat redeployment's value depending on who she's using it on, not her specifically. By that logic, just as buffing your party has more open-ended connotations, so too does debuffing the enemy. Take Welt. His wide arsenal of action delays and speed reducers will become increasingly more valuable, especially as more challenging enemies come out. The more turns your team can take before the enemy does, the more damage you will deal per turn, the less damage you'll take, the more time you'll have for setup, so on and so forth. Not to mention, he also deals respectable damage in his own right. At the moment, it may not be fully appreciated since we're still in a very primitive attack-focused meta where team composition isn't of utmost priority yet. That brings us to Silver Wolf, the second 5-star Nihility unit, or technically the first widely available 5-star Nihility unit. What's her shtick? Silver Wolf differs from Welt in a few ways. While the latter specializes in delaying enemy actions as much as possible, the former is more of a straightforward debuffer, making her very flexible for whatever situation you're dealing with. For starters, her basic attack has a high chance of implanting a random bug on the enemy for 3 turns. She can create 3 types: reducing attack, defense, or speed, courtesy of her talent. And it's not only possible, but encouraged to apply all 3 debuffs to the same enemy, already making her a good candidate for extended fights. While we're on that, anytime an enemy gets weakness broken, they have a chance of getting bugged from that too. Why stacking bugs matters is because of her side note trace, decreasing the enemy's damage resistance whenever using her skill if they have 3 or more debuffs. Speaking of her skill, she deals a small bit of quantum damage to the target enemy just like your basic attack, while forcibly applying the weakness of one of your teammates to the target enemy. Yes, this means you can artificially give an enemy a weakness to quantum that they may not have had before, or fire, wind, imaginary, anything. Additionally, they take bonus damage from that element as well as bonus damage from all sources for the next 2 turns. Universal damage amplification in and of itself is quite good, but being able to nerf their attack, defense, and speed on top of that makes her quite the versatile debuffer, on top of applying weaknesses of choice, though there is one caveat. You can't exactly control which element gets applied, so if you want to maximize consistency with Silver Wolf, you'll probably have to go mono element if you're going quantum, or if you want say fire, half or more of your party should be fire element. That could lead to potential consistency issues and somewhat restrictive team building in the near future, although we'll have to wait and see as we get more characters. Onto her ultimate, it's your typical burst of quantum damage that shreds enemy defense by quite a bit. Not gonna lie, Silver Wolf comes off as very overloaded right from the get-go. She can lower every stat of interest and even forcibly apply elemental weaknesses. The only immediate downside about her is that the debuffs and weaknesses applied are mostly random. Another potential downside is if you want side note to activate early on in a fight, the rest of your party has to apply some kind of debuff as well. Otherwise, that extra damage buff may not come out right away, though that can be alleviated via her Light Cone Incessant Rain. It applies a debuff that increases the target's damage taken for a turn, giving you 1 less debuff to worry about. Overall though, the gist of Silver Wolf is that she wants to stack nerfs on a target of interest, with 3 out of her 4 main Eidolons functioning off of how many debuffs are on the target, and with her unique ability to implant weaknesses, she can, with a bit of work, dramatically amplify your team's fighting capabilities. The only question is, how much? This is where things get circumstantial. Assuming you have the adequate funds to pull for the majority of 5 stars, Silver Wolf is most definitely worth it. If not right now, then for the foreseeable future, on account of her covering a lot of territory previously unexplored. On a surface level, Silver Wolf has equal parts all-purpose debuffs and situational debuffs. The all-purpose debuffs being the attack, defense, and speed reduction on her talent, as well as defense and resistance break on her ultimate and skill respectively. The conditional debuffs being the weakness break and stacking mechanics on traces and eidolons. Now for her to be a recommended pull, especially for free-to-play players, her all-purpose debuffs will be the judge of that. Not to say her conditional ones aren't important, but consistency is what has me unsure about whether she is or isn't a must pull for people who can't afford to wail on the game. That being said, as the video's title implies, Silver Wolf's inclusion, and I guess by extension Kafka's eventual addition, will usher in more attention to Nihility units. If we also factor in Star Rail's bare-bones content structure making the game very stat-checky, number increases will be all the more consequential as we head to late game and end game. In other words, Silver Wolf may actually be a very integral unit for shaping Star Rail's advanced metagame, especially while Sealer remains on top. Presently, Sampo's main draw is enhancing damage over time, especially through his ultimate, and not many available characters capitalize on it. Pela is all-around defense break, making her excellent for one-shot oriented teams, and Welt, as we mentioned earlier, is all about delaying enemy action, along with a bit of damage amplification. Among the 3, and now 4, Silver Wolf is by leaps and bounds the most practical Nihility unit from her all-purpose debuffs alone, and she can work incredibly well alongside her peers for a full debuff team composition that can arm out Sela or whoever you want to use as your main DPS for tons of damage. And that's ultimately what makes me inclined to vouch for Silver Wolf. Welt has been steadily increasing in popularity as players understand the role of Nihility and debuffing more gradually. It's fair to assume the same will apply to Silver Wolf. The only difference is she's easily obtainable thanks to having a featured banner. Not everyone was fortunate enough to pull for Welt, making this a good opportunity to get your hands on a debuffer if you don't have one. From my own personal experience in Forgotten Hall and Simulated Universe, the game's difficulty will heavily revolve around weakness break, so having a character who excels in not only breaking enemy toughness, but also artificially applying whatever elements you want, albeit at random, Silver Wolf has incredible long-term viability, being the most general all-purpose Nihility character of the ones we have so far. I for one am betting heavily on a weakness application becoming more valuable too. Most bosses at the moment have at least 3 elements they're weak to, but I can imagine future content will have less than 3 and force you to bring units that can apply their own. Chances are more debuffers like Silver Wolf will come out in the future, but it doesn't hurt to have a head start. Not to mention the fact that we need 2 parties for a Memory of Chaos, and having an all-purpose debuffer can alleviate the pressure of building 2 specific teams. Wrapping up the video, I should probably go over what to build on her since I doubt everyone knows how to gear up Nihility characters. Unlike Welt, who deals a lot of personal damage, Silver Wolf can be a bit ambiguous in that department. She does a lot of personal damage if you intentionally build her that way, but it's nothing to sweat over. Light cone wise, obviously you want to get her signature weapon, but if you don't have that, then you can opt for before the tutorial mission starts. It synergizes nicely with her talents thanks to the effect hit rate. Alternatively, if you want to boost her personal damage, you can go for either Welt's personal weapon or Good Night and Sleep Well, increasing her damage dealt to enemies based on the number of debuffs. Regarding relics, I've seen some people recommend the standard quantum set Genius of Brilliant Stars paired with the space station set. However, I feel like Silver Wolf would be better off leaving DPS to the actual DPS characters and build Thief of Shooting Meteor instead. Shooting Meteor increases break effect, and Silver Wolf has natural synergy with weakness break. This in tandem with Kingdom of Banditry for more break effect will greatly augment the strength of her technique, which I actually forgot to explain. It essentially deals break damage to all enemies regardless of whether they do or don't have quantum weakness. Opening a fight with weakness break will make Generate and Side Note way more effective, so that's what I personally will prioritize on Silver Wolf. 4-piece Thief of Shooting Meteor and 2-piece Kingdom of Banditry. You can use Brilliant Stars if you want something more general though. Main stat wise, I recommend attack or effect hit rate on body, speed on boots, quantum damage on sphere, and energy on rope. Substat wise, focus on speed and attack as well. Throwing in some more break effect and effect hit rate would also help. Finally, for team building, my preference is hybrid carry. As usual, you want a tank, a healer, a buffer or debuffer, whichever you prefer, in this case debuffer, and then 1 DPS. I plan on using her with Seela as soon as I get her. I've been pretty frustrated that not many enemies have quantum weakness, so having a way to force it on them would be quite convenient. Really excited to see what Silver Wolf will do for the game because Nihility is one of the lesser understood paths compared to Preservation, Abundance, Hunt, and Erudition. I feel like as time goes on, she will become more and more valuable for teams, especially when we hit endgame content. If you have the funds for her, then definitely give her a go. We may not know the scope of her full potential, but from what I can gather, there's a better chance that she'll become more necessary than less. That's gonna be all for today. Let me know in the comments down below if you have any questions on Silverwolf. I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. Aside from that, if you enjoyed the video, it would be great if you could leave a like and subscribe. Really appreciate it. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other Star Rail content if you haven't yet. But for now, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon in the next one. Take care.